Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Omega Insight. First off, I just want to say thank you for all of our participants who participated this last weekend in our Omega One program, the first one launched since the pandemic. Thank you again to all of the volunteers who came and staffed and helped with attendance and setting up and breaking down, and all of the people who showed up for graduation. It was so nice to see your smiling faces. I really did have a wonderful weekend. I hope the participants did as well. Our next Omega One is September 10th, 11th, and 12th. You'll be able to register for that by the end of this week. Now, tonight's topic is about fables and the decoding, decoding like the secret codes to enlightenment that are in fables. So first, I'd like to think about or ask the question, why do you think we tell fables to our children? I mean, why not just tell a true story? Or why not tell stories where evil wins, or about the Exxon oil spills, or such that? I think the idea is because as children, when we're wanting to teach our children, we want them to see triumph and goodness. It's almost through a fable we're teaching them how to be a good individual. When I think about the fable of King Arthur and the sword and the stone, and only one who was virtuous and didn't need to prove anything was able to pull the sword from the stone. And I think that's one of the things that we go for, is that we want our kids to recognize that they're also capable of all of these virtues that are threaded through. And again, it really is. There's a lot of enlightenment in the stories. Now, I was actually quite surprised when I discovered that many of the fables that I grew up with, Cinderella, Hansel and Gretel, Snow White, they were actually rewritten and cleaned up to have a better curb appeal, because in the older versions, the mothers, it wasn't the stepmothers, it was the actual mother who was evil. And the writers, especially when they were turning this into videos for Disney, they felt like the public wouldn't embrace a mother who was vengeful or jealous or plotted to kill her daughter or kill the children. So they changed it around. Like Snow White is probably one of the most popular and well-known. It was actually released in 1937, but the original was written in 1812 by Brothers Grimm. And it had a darker side to it, and there were some differences in the story. But nonetheless, the fables, they carry the same idea. It's always virtue, struggle, obstacles, and then finally triumph. I think that's probably one of the reasons why we read fables to our children when they're young. We're teaching them in a way of not just sitting them down and say, here's how you go, this is what we do. It's more about, here's a gentle story, and then we could always remind them, hey, remember Fernand the Bull, or, remember, that's the only fable that I can think of, Winnie the Pooh. Always so happy and jolly, and all he wants is some honey, which is sweet, the sweetness, the nectar of life. Anyway, I wanted to talk about or decode Snow White. So it's by no stretch of the word, like if we can think of the word Snow White, whether separate or together, both of them represent purity. And purity, the definition of purity, is freedom from adulteration or contamination. Therefore, it's safe to assume that the heroine of the fable represents virtue. That's what we're looking for. Like, we can think about virtuous. And then we could look at the queen. And the queen, she represents vanity, jealousy, and greed. The magic mirror that she had truly was just a reflection, which represents truth. It's just reflecting back the truth of what was happening. The hunter, the queen orders the hunter to take Snow White into the woods and kill her, take out the heart and bring her the heart. That's what the queen wants. So the queen, the hunter, he refused to do it, obviously. So the simplicity of man, not meaning he was simple, but he didn't want to cross his virtue, and he couldn't bring himself to kill purity and virtue, so he didn't. So he represented like the simplicity of man unwanting to cause harm, because the basic fundamental of a human being we don't have a desire to cause harm. I don't think anyone is born saying, I can't wait to kill people. It goes against our virtue. And the heart, of course, represents the life force, which, of course, the queen naturally wanted to consume. Now, since the hunter didn't kill Snow White, he left her in the woods, and she was befriended by woodland creatures. Now, we could look at this, that woodland creatures, we could say virtue is befriended or in harmony with nature. And we can also say that our nature is to be virtuous. Did a little play there. Then she finds a tiny forest, a cottage in the forest. Now, in the story by Brothers Grimm, the dwarves take pity on her. And they say, come in if you'll help keep, this is actually what they said, if you will keep our house clean, cook for us, make our beds, sew, wash, knit, and keep everything clean and orderly, then you can stay with us and you shall have anything you want. So essentially, when virtue is kept pure, you won't have anything wants. There won't be anything to want because it is enough for us to be virtuous. The dwarfs represent wisdom. I mean, I know I should have remembered what these are, happy, sad, goofy. But they're wisdom, they're hardworking, they're joyful, and they're just abundantly love and acceptance. They just have acceptance, and of course they want to take care of her in their wisdom. But the idea of the wisdom is they say to her, do not let anybody in the cottage. That's the way to protect her, stay inside, to keep it pure. Do not let anybody in. So the house, we could say, this isn't a far stretch, the house represents the soul. I've heard people mention that before. In dreams, a house often represents a soul. In order to keep the soul pure, you can't have contamination. Now, disregarding the wisdom, Snow White becomes a victim. Not once. In the story, in the Brothers Grimm, 3 times. She does this 3 times, which I think 3 is another significant number, but that's another lecture that I would not want to talk about. So the first one, the queen disguises herself, and she binds Snow White very tightly with lace until she faints and then leaves her to be dead. She just is left for dead. We could look at the metaphor of lace and the binding of evil. She's, sometimes we even say this, it's laced with arsenic. So anyway, she was laced with that, bound for dead. The dwarfs found her and rescued her. The second time, she's given a comb, which she doesn't recognize that it's poisonous, and she starts combing her hair, and she falls ill. The dwarfs find her again. And the third time is the one that everyone's familiar with. The queen disguises herself as a haggard old woman and offers her an apple, and Snow White takes a bite of the apple and then falls to the poison. So we could look metaphorically of the coding here that she's bound by evil, groomed by evil, and then finally fed by evil. Now remember, it was just a bite. So the dwarves, they couldn't save her. When she ingested the evil, they couldn't save her. And what they did is they placed her in a glass coffin. Now, of course, this is another metaphor. It's that you could see the virtue, but were unable to implement it. They assume she's dead, which she's not. And as time passes, a prince comes by, and royalty, which metaphorically is often considered somebody who has knowledge, somebody who has understanding and compassion. In order to lead or be royal, be the king, you have to be compassionate towards your subjects and lead them with understanding and knowledge. Now he falls in love with her beauty and begs the dwarves to let him have her. So if he represents knowledge and she represents virtue, the dwarves finally give the okay. So that's the wisdom. So virtue and knowledge merge together with wisdom. We can look at it that way. Now, when the prince is taking the Snow White back in the glass coffin, one of the servants trips and falls, and the coffin breaks, and when she hits the ground, the bite of apple that she took was actually lodged in her throat. It comes out of her throat, and she's alive, which, of course, naturally makes the prince very happy. So then they plan to wed. Now, the queen's mirror, again, just reporting truth, states that there's a new queen who is fairer than her. And not knowing that the queen, that it's Snow White, the queen attends the wedding. So in the story, the Brothers Grimm story, the queen attends the wedding, and Snow White recognizes that's the woman who tried to kill her. So as punishment for her wicked ways, she's made to put on heated iron shoes and dance until she falls down dead. This is how it's written. So she has to put iron shoes on and dance until she falls down dead. Metaphorically speaking, we could say in order to wipe out evil, there's friction, strength, and perseverance are required. And then, of course, everybody lives happily ever after. Isn't that just wonderful? So as I said, when we think about the fables that we teach our children, this one especially, like the codes to enlightenment, there's things in there that are threaded through. Now, of course, that's the original version. The Disney version still carries the same thing. Snow White still wins. Virtue still comes out at the end. And the wisdom is still there. It's just, like I said, it was so that they didn't think public opinion would appreciate a mother trying to kill her child. So that's all I really had to say today on that, the secrets of decoding the fables, because within it are threaded truths. And I find it fascinating that when we read to our children, the stories that we read, most of them have that, where there's some kind of struggle, but the heroine always comes up and wins. There's always victory. There's always loss as well. Most everyone knows I'm a big reader, and most of the books that I have, these are all philosophy books, or the educational books. There's very rarely any fiction, excuse me. Most of these are nonfiction. The fiction books that I gravitate to are where there's a young heroine or young man who's trying to overcome adversity and hardships, and eventually it's always one person who lost, and there's good and evil, and magic is often implied. There are things that we don't understand. Things that are beyond our capacity, but we still have to contend with, and each one has power. Magic is also considered power, like with Harry Potter. It's the inner power that he had within him that he didn't recognize or didn't even realize. And of course, the ultimate thing, the reason why Harry Potter lived was because of love, because of his mother's love, the strongest power there is. Well, anyway, thank you for joining me tonight for the Fables of the Secret Codes to Our Enlightenment. This week. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I look forward to checking in with you on Friday for our coffee talk. Have a wonderful evening. Bye now.